Welcome to the podcast, A Drink with Derek. Follow comedian Derek Richards on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and don't forget to subscribe to his YouTube channel and watch all episodes of the podcast. Now grab a drink and join your host, Derek Richards.
I used to have a story about when my son turned 18, I was going to punch him in the face. He's 18 now. On his birthday, I got up early. I set my alarm. And I went downstairs and I made myself a good breakfast. And then I heard him getting up. And I go, here we go. It's game time. My heart started racing. My hands got sweaty. Mom's spaghetti. So dumb. Oh, God. I started giving myself a pep talk. I was like, you can punch him. He's 18. You can do this because you did not spank him, and these are all the spankings that he should have coming to him. And then I heard him coming down the stairs, so I started walking towards the bottom of the staircase, and then he turned the corner, and I just saw a little boy walking towards me. And I was like, you can't punch this little boy. But here's what you can do. You can put a hockey helmet on him and hockey gloves, and then you can put those on as well, and we can go in the backyard and we can locker box. So that's what we did. And I kept hitting him in the shoulder. And he goes, it doesn't even hurt. What are you doing? And I was like, all right, just wait. And then the third round, he could not lift his hands up to protect his face. That's old man knowledge. President style. After we locker boxed, I went inside and I checked my social media, and there were over 1,000 messages asking if I had punched my son in the face. Happy birthday. That's the kind of world we live in, I guess. So I replied to all these messages. I said, no, I couldn't punch him in the face. I didn't think it'd be fair to him. So instead, we went in the backyard and we locker boxed. And then I put my phone away. And then 24 hours later, I checked, and I had a message from a man in Little Rock, Arkansas, and he had replied back to me with a picture of Urban Dictionary's definition of locker box. And I would like to tell you that it is not what I thought. Urban Dictionary's definition of locker box is when you're having sex with someone, you also shove your nuts into them. I mean, where do you even start? Do people do that? And if so, how? How do you do that? The only thing I know about that sexual position is you probably need the lights on. That does not seem like a feel-around job to finish it. Oh, my God. So anyways, I sent over 1,000 people a message from my home computer that said, nah, man, I didn't punch him in the face. You know, because that wouldn't be fair. Instead, I brought him in the backyard. And I put my balls up there. For like a week, I was nervous that the green light on my computer was going to come on the camera, and it would just be the feds like, what else is going on over there, creep? All right.
Locker boxing. That is I'm going to ask you about that in a second. I've never heard that term. That bit is hysterical, which is a bit from my guest today. By the way, it's a Drink with Derek. I am Derek Richards, your host. My guest has. I'm gonna gush about you because you should be gushed about. This is you've got 6 late night appearances. Your 5th album, 3rd special is Dad Chaniels, which is out right now. Over 1 billion streams on all your albums. You've got a documentary called I Need You to Kill. Also, your podcast, Middle of Somewhere. Chad Daniels. ChadDaniels.com is his website. Follow him on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. How are you, my friend? We were just talking before we started recording. It's been a long ass time.
It has been a very long time. Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. We had worked together in Appleton, Wisconsin.
Yep.
Was the first time we met. You were hosting. I was middling, and John Fox.
Yeah.
The late John Fox was headlining the show that week, and I thought you were absolutely hysterical. I'm very excited for all your success that has rolled down the pike for you. I think it's really, really super cool. You are hilarious. Before we go any further, though, I got a couple quick questions to kind of get to know our guest, the people that are tuning in here. A couple random questions. Your best late night drunk food.
Well, that's interesting that you. When I was house MC in Grand Forks, North Dakota, I did a 6-month stint there. They have a place there called Red Pepper that has grinders and cheese tostadas, but they have this white sauce. It's like a peppery ranch. It's just insane how good it is. And I would say that the salami grinder with Colby cheese and taco meat is my number one go-to drunk food. And I've tried to make these grinders at my house. And just last night, I guess Sunday night, I ordered a box of like a kit from Red Pepper. My son went to school in Grand Forks, and so he came over for dinner, and we all kind of made our own grinders and hung out and chit-chatted. But yeah, I'd go with Red Pepper grinder for sure.
That is so cool. Now, personality trait on a woman that would make you not date her.
I don't know if it's a personality trait, but saying like a lot unnecessarily, I can't, I don't know what it is, but it's like, I have this thing where my head starts to bob along when they say like so much. It's like, sometimes when I'll encounter someone with a stutter and it's the same thing. My eye twitches when they stutter. And it's like, I'm not trying to do it. It's like, you have your thing, I have my thing. Don't yell at me. So I think it's we went to the I can't do it. Too much deciphering what's happening. Is it a simile? Are you just pausing for time? I have no idea. So that's my answer.
Now, if you were invited to a swingers party, would you participate?
No.
Okay. That was very definitive. That sounded like that might have happened to you at some point, and that brought up a bad memory.
No, not a bad memory. It's just, I have my boundaries, and other people's wives are included in that group.
I love your Midwest sensibility. I appreciate that. You're in Fergus Falls, Minnesota. Before we go any further, you're from there. You live there now, and as much success as you have had, why are you still staying in Fergus Falls as opposed to going to, say, LA or New York, which is normally the trajectory that a lot of people want to take?
Yeah, I think for me, it's like I made a list of things I wanted to be, and it went father, comedian, and unfortunately for my ex-wife, husband. But it sucks that it fell that far down, but there has to be a third, so... but father was the number one. And so I just wanted to make sure my kids were around family. And, like my ex-wife, she knew she was marrying someone that was going to be on the road, but kids never ask for that. They're born into it. And I just figured I'd give them a life that I wanted for them instead of, having them sacrifice and me being gone. So when I get home off the road, when I'm in Fergus Falls, there is no comedy. So it's like, I'm home. That's it.
Which is cool. It's great to be able to have that opportunity to completely check out and be present with your kids, with your family,
Sure.
And not have that exterior noise where if you're at home and you're in a big city with a comedy scene and all of a sudden you're at home and the phone rings, you're like, oh, somebody can't make it. Can you come out and fill in? And that knee-jerk reaction that we all have is, oh, shit, yeah, I should go out there and do this.
Yep. Yeah, but I physically can't get somewhere in time. I am in the middle of the woods. So yeah, it's good. And, and selfishly, it's also, I need that time. If I have a bad week and you come home, it's not this woe is me, I had a bad week. It's like everything, you hit the ground running. Kids have homework.
Sure.
Time I was married, it's like my wife needs help. She's been here by herself for, you can bitch and moan about a bad week of comedy, but imagine working full time, taking care of 2 kids, all of that stuff. I mean, it's like, oh, you got to go to 2 movies during your bad week? That must have really sucked. It's like, yeah, okay, I get it.
Yeah, you never want to tell your significant other the good times you have on the road. Never.
Right, yeah.
That's why I'm showing this thing behind me. This is the Comedy House Comedy Condo where I'm staying in Tulsa, Oklahoma.
Yep.
And it looks like it was decorated in like a 1970s funeral parlor.
It really, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah, and there's stains, and you may have created one. I don't know. No judgment, but I mean, there's stains on this curtain that I just don't know how. I mean, I watch a lot of SVU, Law and Order. I don't know how that got there.
Yeah, you do not want to blacklight a comedy condo, that's for sure.
No, and literally, now, I don't know if you had this when you were here, but you can see right here, there's a line. That is a crack in the house. Yeah. That is not like wallpaper peeling up. That is a physical crack in the house, and the line goes across the ceiling and down the other wall. So if for whatever reason, which would make for an excellent podcast, that this chunk of the house just breaks off,
yep,
you know what happened.
I remember being there with Kurt Fletcher, and it was the time where Burger King had the Baconator, where it was like 6 pieces of bacon on one patty, then another patty, then cheese, then 6 pieces of bacon. And I remember we each got one, and I ate mine. We were out drinking or whatever, and then he went to the bathroom, and I ate his, and we had to go back to Burger King to get him another Baconator. So that could have been our napkin. I have no idea.
What is you and I enjoyed plenty of cocktails on the road on several occasions. I mean, because we had worked together in Appleton, and then we ended up doing a bunch of shows together after that. I remember there was one time we had an off night. We stayed at your aunt's house in Peoria.
Yeah, my Aunt Dorothy. Yep, absolutely. And
sweet lady.
Because you brought me, I was lucky enough to have people like you in my corner bringing me to all these shows. I mean, I needed the work. And so to have you guys doing that for me, I'm still so very thankful for that. And, you talked about the first week at Appleton together. I remember really changing my view on a couple of things watching you, because you had a chunk that was very personal to you. And I remember that it wasn't like necessarily killing the whole time, but it was a very important thing to say. And at the end of it all, it was a huge laugh and a huge applause break. And I remember thinking, like, you don't have to be a machine gun when you're on stage. You can actually say some things you want to say and have them be meaningful, but also still do your job. And that has stuck with me forever. So.
Wow, thank you so much. And and I noticed when I watch your clips, like the one that we just saw about you wanting to punch your son when he turned 18. And it's just the way your storytelling, it unfolds with that story. And with a lot of your jokes, like the joke you do about going to IHOP and showing the guy your passport because you wanted to see your driver's license.
Yeah. And
so anybody should go on and look Chad Daniels IHOP animated clip wherever they can find it. Sure. And it's hilarious. Okay. But that clip is just like you said, it's a personal true story, but it just goes and it's funny throughout.
Oh, well, thanks.
And it's just and like you said, there's a great finish to it at the end, but I mean, just the whole story is very well crafted from start to finish. And I'm thinking just those 2 recent clips because I just saw those.
Sure.
So, and getting back here to locker boxing, which is on your special, Dad Channels.
Yeah.
I never heard the term locker boxing in any capacity.
Well, I had heard it in one capacity.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. I was so taken aback when I got that screenshot. I just couldn't believe it. And so, I mean, that's kind of one of those stories where it seems like, oh man, he took some time to write this story. I didn't. That's
right.
exactly what happened. I mean, it was gifted to me as is. So that was one of those blessings.
Well, I'm sure in that instance too, you're going through and you remember the experience, and then all of a sudden the fact that screenshot was sent to you, you're like, this is the finish. Yeah. This is the plastic bride and groom going on top of this joke cake.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It definitely helped. I mean, it was a little light bulb went off.
Now, where did you shoot that special at? I love that setting.
Oh, thanks. I shot at Denver Comedy Works, their South location.
Okay.
And so it's like a mini theater, you know, there's an upper deck and I guess they call it a balcony in theaters, but it was just really cool. And the people there were so supportive. They came, I mean, they packed it. And then the club did such an incredible job of like staying out of the shot. And I mean, that's not easy, right? When you're serving and you have to bring people things, to stay out of a shot when everything is looking towards the stage, all the cameras are pointed at the stage. They were like little ninjas running around. It was unbelievable. So
that's a stunner. It's a lot easier to pull something like that off in an actual theater. But
right.
in a comedy club with people serving drinks, I mean, that's next to impossible.
Yeah, it was a dream come true. You know, I didn't know anything. It was my first time ever at that club. But I had, you know, emails kind of piling up like, when are you coming to Denver? And I thought, well, put your money where your mouth is then. Let's see how this goes. And
that's a gutsy call, pulling that off in a venue that you had never been to before. It's because you like having that level of comfort if you're going to be investing in something that big. Now, did you produce that yourself, or did somebody else come in there and get behind it? Or did you?
I did, yeah. So I recorded an album kind of on accident at Madison. Oh my gosh.
Comedy on State?
Holy shit, I kept thinking street in my head. Comedy on State. And it's embarrassing that I didn't remember that. I have a little pandemic brain because it's one of my favorite clubs in the United States. Mm-hmm. And I went in there and I was telling the guy, I'm like, hey, I think I'm going to record this album in January. And he goes, we just got new equipment. Why don't you do it now? And so they pushed record. That was it. I didn't have to use it, blah, blah, blah. And then that became Footprints on the Moon, which was kind of like my the album that kind of pushed things over a little bit on Pandora. Mm-hmm. And then I ended up going with this brand new record label called 800 Pound Gorilla. They were brand new at the time. And then they jumped on to do Dad Channels too. So they teamed up with a production company, had everything going. And, you know, at the time I had, in my opinion, the greatest agent in the game, you know, Hillary Robbie, just unbelievable. And then my manager, Sam, helped, and it just all kind of came together. So
now, did 800 Pound Gorilla bankroll that shoot, or was that on you?
No, yeah, they did. They bankrolled it along with the production company. Yeah.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah, no kidding. But then
that's huge. That's a big expense.
You see how much money someone's spending on you, and you're like, oh shit, maybe I should have tried harder. That's a lot of pressure, man. I don't like that.
You've got over 1 billion streams. I mean, you're like the McDonald's of comedy. You got
not good for you. That's right.
You got to. It's delicious at the time, but it's probably going to haunt you later. What we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording. When someone sees 1 billion streams, I mean, that's first off, that's an insane number, and congratulations. Well, but I mean, how do you view that?
I mean, it's really cool. You know, I mean, when you see the other comedians that have those numbers, it's nice because you looked up to them when you were coming up and stuff like that. But the truth is, you know, everyone hears 1 billion streams and they're like, oh, well, how many jets do you have? And it's like, well, you need to understand something, that for one stream, here's what you get. It's a decimal point and then 17 zeros and then a 3. And that is the percentage point of a penny of what you get for a stream. So it's like, you know, I would never complain about free money. So I'm not, but I'm just telling you, it is not what it seems like it would be.
Yeah, there's a lot of misconceptions that people have, I think, when they see something like that. And yeah, like you say, where's your private jet? Where's this? Where's that? So it's just a misunderstanding that people have, that the layperson has in, about the business itself.
Sure. Yep.
Now, what do you think, was there any one or two things that you can point to in particular that you feel moved the needle for you?
I think someone at Pandora put me into their algorithm, because I've even emailed them a long time ago. I went to San Francisco for the first time. This was probably 7 years ago.
Right.
And it was the weekend that was kind of encompassed by the 4th of July. And so I didn't think anyone was going to show up, and the shows were packed, and people were coming out saying, "Oh, I listened to you on Pandora." I was like, okay, I didn't even know you could listen to comedy on Pandora. So then I started kind of doing some research and figuring out, you can actually see what percentage, you can see how many people listen to you on Pandora, and then you can see what percentage are from what area in the country.
Okay.
And so I couldn't believe San Francisco had a huge percentage of that. And so I was like, oh, this makes sense. And so I did some more research, and I emailed Pandora and I said, I don't know what you guys are doing for me, but thank you. Let me know who I can, send a gift to. And they said, just keep putting out albums. I was like, if that's the deal, that's fine with me. And so I just kept getting pushed. And then once you're up in the algorithm, you go to different stations. So like Today's Comedy and blah, blah, blah. And then people can just click one time and they make a station for you. Right.
Right.
And then after that, you can make commercials on those stations for certain areas of the country. Like I can say, hey, Atlanta, I'm going to be at the Punchline September, blah, 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 to blah, blah, blah. And it goes just to people listening to you in Atlanta. So it's like this snowball effect of some people start listening. Then when they thumbs up, more people get your stuff. And then now you can send, targeted commercials. And so
I never knew that.
Yeah. So for me, the number one thing is Pandora.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. I mean, you can go on late night and you can do these shows to, kind of show off to your high school buddies a little bit.
Right.
It doesn't even come close to people listening. I mean, they can accidentally stumble upon you on Pandora, right?
Right.
So I'm listening to Derek Richards radio, and then all of a sudden I hear Chad Daniels and I go, oh, that was funny. I'll click on him. And then it's crazy how it works.
I got to hashtag Chad Daniels on my Pandora. I got to ride these coattails.
Uh-huh.
I'll take it. I'm not, you kidding me? Jesus Christ.
Well, it's actually a decimal point and then 17 zeros and a 3% of a coattail.
Well, hang on. Let me take a look at the coattail I have now. That's it. I have a stained curtain coattail that is hanging behind me. What is I remember here, this was so funny. We did a gig, and I'm going to lead in. I want to ask you about, because we're talking about having cocktails and stuff like that.
Sure.
Do you remember we did a gig and the crowd was so obnoxious. It was a one-nighter somewhere in Illinois. Okay. And you were on stage, and this crowd just didn't give a shit. There was a group of people, I think it was a group of women, and you went on stage and started doing, and I don't know if you do this all the time, you started doing your Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech.
Oh,
do you remember this?
I don't.
You go, I have a dream when people could come to comedy shows and listen and be attentive and not be disruptive douchebags. I was in the back of the room fucking dying laughing. That was so fun. And the crowd, and they were still talking. They could have cared less. And you just went off and just did your thing. So damn funny.
Oh, thanks. I think a lot of the shows that we worked together went like that for me, because when you brought that up, I immediately was thinking Fond du Lac, Wisconsin. And then you're like, somewhere in Illinois. And I'm like, all right, that makes sense.
Yeah, we had all those little goofy runs through the Midwest. But you and I had a number of cocktails together. Appleton, Wisconsin, Cleo's, that great bar decorated like Christmas time all the time.
So fantastic.
And that bartender poured you a drink like she didn't want to see you again.
Yeah. Yeah.
It
may have been called the lights out.
Yes. What is of all the tales you've had, what is your personal favorite drunk story?
Oh, man. Well, there's one where I was in Vegas. I'm going to just quickly tell you I turned it into a bit though. So there's one in Vegas where I was at a bachelor party, drank too much, tried to do a backflip off a bridge that was over a little waterway connecting two pools. And I slipped and I broke 2 ribs and I couldn't figure out where my friends went. And I didn't know which building our room was in because there was like 4 different buildings around these pools. And so finally the security came to get me and they said, why don't you calm down and just play some outdoor gambling games? And so I played blackjack. I got kicked off the blackjack table for being too drunk. And then I went to craps and ended up, I didn't know that you could call for same dice if it goes off the table.
Right.
So after a while, the security guard was in a 3-piece suit and it was so hot. And I kept throwing the dice off the table on purpose, yelling same dice and making him go get them. So that's one of them. I did enjoy that story.
But so you were gambling, playing blackjack and craps with broken ribs at the time.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, I didn't really feel it until about 18 hours later. Yep. Pretty rough. We drank a lot of tequila that morning. But I think my favorite one, again, back in Wisconsin, I was working it was a bar by night, but it was a breakfast burrito place by day. And so I went in there and it was dollar Yag Bomb night. And so they were trying to send me Yag Bombs on stage. I go, here's the deal, you guys. Buy them, set them up on the bar, and when I get done, I'll do them. But this show's going to suck if I start drinking right now. So I get off stage, and there's a line of these things. You know, they're like the mini ones, the little thimble cups that they give you at a college bar.
Right.
But I do them. Next thing you know, I remember being in a junkyard, and then I remember just little pockets throughout the night. And I wake up, and I have my whole right thigh is bruised. I have no idea what happened, and I have cuts all over my hand. And so I'm like, what did I do last night? And so I call the feature and I go, hey man, let me know when you want to get going. And he goes, did you get your car yet? And I go, oh, we don't have the car here. Okay. And he goes, yeah, I have no clue. You took off after the bar. So here's what happened. He tells me a band plays after we perform. I got so drunk, I went up on stage and I started playing the kabasa or something, where it's like it's a bunch of beads around it on the outside.
Sure.
And I was hitting my leg. That's how I was playing it. So that's where the bruise comes from. Then I was playing the tambourine, but I was slicing my hand with it, like chopping my hand. So then I also found rocks and little pieces of plastic in my pocket because I was trying to figure out where I was. And I was like, how did this happen? So ends up, I bought one of their albums. I'm walking home. A police officer, I start to remember, comes in the alley. I take the CD out and throw it on the ground. I'm like emptying my pockets with my hands up. Get down on the ground, just absurd. So he goes, hey, where are you staying? And I go, I think I'm staying over here. I show him my card for the hotel, and he goes, yep, it's right over there. Then I don't remember anything till I wake up. I go back to the place to get my car. I go inside to make sure that I've paid my tab. I don't want to leave without whatever. And there's 4 cops sitting at a table eating breakfast burritos. And I go and one of those little machines you can blow into and get your blood alcohol.
Oh yeah.
So I just put a buck in, blow in it just to see, and it's a lot. It's a 0.18.
The next morning.
0.18. So I'm leaving, and one of the cops goes, "Hey man, where are you going?" And I go, "Oh, I just taking off. I have my keys in my hand." So he goes, "Are you driving?" And I go, "Yeah." And he goes, "Well, that says 0.18." I go, "No way that thing's right. No chance." So he goes, "Why don't you come over here and try mine?" So goes out, gets a breathalyzer. I blow in it, 0.18. And he was like, "You need to sit down. I'll order you a breakfast burrito, but you're not going anywhere." So I'm sitting there. Then his little shoulder walkie-talkie blows up. And it's like, he goes, "Holy shit, you guys. Twice last night, I find the comedian from whatever the bar's name was, walking around lost. One time I follow him into an alley, throws his hands up, breaks a CD all over the ground. Then later on, I tell him where his hotel is. He must have walked in the opposite direction, because I see him standing outside of an abandoned car in a junkyard. When I ask him what he's doing, he says he's thinking about sleeping there because he can't find his hotel. So I end up bringing him home. He goes, "Can you guys believe that?" And the guy goes, "Sure can. He's right here. Just blew a 0.18. Just the most ridiculous. I'm going to tell you something. I had a child at that time. I had a child. Yeah. What in the hell is wrong with me? But
oh my God, man! When you go big, you don't mess around.
Yeah, it's pretty goofy.
I'll tell you what. I give you credit for having the responsibility to not drive. I mean, because not a lot of guys would have exercised that level of responsibility. To be honest with you.
Well, I don't even know how that happened. I like to think that someone else had a hand in that. The feature, at the bar. So I had my keys on me.
Jesus. What you did a special. I saw the trailer for it, which looked super cool. You, Tom Segura, and Pete Lee.
Yep.
It's called I Need You to Kill.
Yeah.
And this was out back in what, 2016, 2017, I think is when it came out.
That sounds right. Yep.
If I'm not mistaken. Yep. What's the story behind that? How did that come about? Because you were going overseas. It was shot in China, Singapore.
Yep.
Where else? What's that? How did that come about? And where did you guys go? What was the idea behind the documentary?
So the owner of Acme Comedy Company in Minneapolis, where I started doing stand-up, and so did Pete Lee. The owner there grew up right across the bay. I can't remember the name of the city, but it's right across the bay from Hong Kong.
Right.
And so he had this idea where he saw what was happening in comedy in Hong Kong, which was they were just about to get to how there was an 80s boom in comedy and then a 90s bust because there was just too much. It was oversaturated. Well, he wanted to go there and help them avoid the bust. And so he brought the three of us, and then we kind of went over and did shows. We did Hong Kong, we did Singapore, and we did Macau, like the Las Vegas of China.
Sure.
And so we did those, and then I had never met Segura before, and I'd known Pete forever. We were very good friends, and by the time Segura and I got off the plane, it was like we were old buddies, and we just all had a blast. It was unreal.
So because there's also other comedians that are featured in this documentary as well. Yep. These are comics that are over there. So you guys went over there as the three Americans.
Right.
And then they had a local comedy scene where the locals were going up and doing stuff as well.
Yeah. And I think there was it was a contest even during when we were there. It was the kind of the preliminaries of this Hong Kong Comedy Festival contest. So,
right.
So we got to see everybody, and there were some funny people, but it was you could tell that they just hadn't necessarily been influenced by a lot of older comedians, I guess.
Sure.
So if you're looking back, like Joan Rivers, to me, opened not only doors for women, she opened doors for anyone who wanted to say what was on their mind. I mean, she was just incredible. I know everybody says Lenny Bruce all the time, but Joan Rivers, man, her early stuff is outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous. And I think that kicked down just as many doors as Bruce, but
yeah, I had a great, I met her. I saw her in West Palm Beach, Florida. And Amazing. I mean, it was her and Don Rickles, and she went first and Rickles went second.
Yeah.
And I met Rickles before the show, and sadly, Rickles was one of my heroes. And then I met him, and he was very dismissive. He was a huge asshole. Now, he could have had a horrible day. So, I'll give somebody a hall pass. Anybody can have a crappy day. I was the only guy backstage. It wasn't like there was a ton of us back there. He took a picture and so forth, but it was not the experience that I wanted to have.
Sure.
Being a comedian, meeting your hero.
Yeah.
And then I met Joan Rivers after her set. And because I knew the entertainment director at the Kravis Center in West Palm Beach, she was on point. And this is probably maybe a couple years before she passed away.
Okay.
But she was on it. Just on it. And she had, just some smoking relevant material that was so non-PC. And you should have seen the crowd. It's like 2,500. It's in South Florida. It's in West Palm Beach. So it's it's an older Jewish crowd. So she was doing some Jewish jokes. She's Jewish.
Right.
But the crowd was kind of like had a case of the ass. And I'm laughing my ass off. I am just dying.
Yeah.
And she did a joke about Twitter being useless, but and this was the time, when Twitter was just coming out, and she goes, I think Twitter's useless. I think it'd be great if it was helping people out, like back when Anne Frank was in the attic. It's like, hashtag do you smell gas? And I fucking died laughing. I think it was the only person in the whole theater that cracked up.
Yeah, and whether or not you think that kind of stuff is funny, that kicked doors down back when she was starting. She
huge.
That's what I try to tell young comedians. Are like, is there anyone I should be listening to that I haven't? I'm like, I bet you've never listened to Joan Rivers. Go listen to her early stuff. Mm-hmm. It is mind-blowing what she was getting away with. I'm not sure if The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel is based on her, but I would think it could be.
No, she was absolutely incredible.
Yeah.
And so you were saying the comedians over there didn't really have anybody that they were watching or influenced by comedians, here in the States. Now how hard was it translating your American humor to those audiences, or were there a bunch of expats in the crowd? So it kind of made it much more palatable?
Yeah, it was expats for the most part in Hong Kong. And then Macau was more mainland China. That was pretty miserable.
Why was it miserable? What happened?
It was the last show of the week. I ate it so hard, but absolutely didn't care. I just started pouring gasoline on the fire. Now, poor Pete Lee, he's on stage murdering, and then all of a sudden it gets quiet, and I didn't know what had happened. This guy walked in a white suit, and behind him, a bunch of guys in black suits, and it was like this notorious Chinese mobster with his whole entourage around him, and they were going around telling people to be quiet because he couldn't hear. And so
this was in Macau.
Yeah, it was insane.
Wow.
And I can't remember the guy's name, but I did look it up at the time, and I was like, yeah, that's the dude, because Pete Lee didn't drink at the time, and the guy he thought he was very funny. So he went up to Pete with a shot, and he said, hey, let's do this shot. And Pete was like, I can't. And everyone was like, that's very disrespectful. So I just grabbed the shot from Pete, and I did it. And I was like, hey, man, he doesn't drink. Hopefully this gets rid of some of the disrespect. And of course, it was probably even more disrespectful, but whatever.
Now, your schedule now, which of course is always going to be written on a dry erase board with as we eventually roll out of the pandemic. But your schedule on your website, chaddaniels.com, you've got a bunch of stuff booked into 2021. And a lot of this is really, it's cool. You've got a lot of like one-off shows in these clubs that are being put together. Did you put this together yourself, or was this put together by an agent or a manager? Because the routing on it is very well done.
Yeah, thank you. I have a manager. Her name is Sam, and she used to be an agent. So she draws from that past and really knows how to do all this stuff. And so she set all of it up. And, I keep telling her, let's not book anything because it's probably going to go away. And she goes, that's my job. I don't care. We'll have it in there. And if you can't do it, we'll move it. I mean, she's so flexible and it's so, kind about everything that it makes my life a lot easier.
You need to scrape some DNA off of her and clone this human.
No doubt.
Because there's not a lot of people that I talk to that can say, you know what, my agent is really looking out for my best interest.
Well, I was very lucky because before I needed my manager to do this, I had an agent. Again, I said, I think the best agent that's ever worked. I mean, from what I've gathered, she just, made it happen. And, also you talk about like, where was a turning point? I think finding these two, I can add that to the list, certainly.
Now, did you find them or did they find you?
So going back to Comedy on State, and I remembered it right away, if you noticed, Eve is one of the owners there. And I went to her after I fired my old manager and I said, if you can think of anyone that you think my personality would gel with, I don't need the tippy top. I need someone that I'm going to get along with because, I got along with my manager before that. And she brought up Sam. And then when I got together with Sam, I think it went this way. When I got together with Sam, then Sam had me talk to Hillary. But Hillary also kind of convinced Sam to go with me. So they were kind of. So
Hillary was.
Hillary's my agent.
Okay, is your agent, and then Sam was your manager. Okay, gotcha. Okay, cool.
Yep, she decided to get out of the agent business, and so clear. I miss her a ton, but it is nice to have somebody who knows what they're doing.
Oh, that's huge. I mean, if you get somebody who's kind of wandering around and doesn't, they're kind of taking chances and not really knowing exactly the direction that they should be going. Yeah, that's a huge pain in the ass if they don't know what they're doing.
Right. And I've seen a lot of guys lose, or, a lot of people lose their agent and hit the panic button because they don't know what they're going to do.
Right.
Sam immediately walked me through all the steps we were going to take, laid out a game plan. And I didn't even have to hit the panic button. I felt so calm about everything after I talked to her. So
now, have you ever doubted yourself?
Oh, of course. I mean, I doubt myself more personally than I do professionally, because there was a while ago where I had a show where the crowd wasn't coming with me, and it wasn't when we worked together. There were several of those without you, Derek.
I'm good. I'm glad there were miserable experiences that didn't have my name attached.
I just wanted to let you know I wasn't eating shit on purpose in front of you. So I was just having a crummy night, and I kept trying to jump where I thought the crowd would go with me. And then finally I thought, well, fuck this. I'm not going to cater to the crowd. It's like, these are my ideas. If you like them, come back. And that's what I told the crowd. I said, if you think this stuff is funny, come back and bring a friend next time and fill the seat that's being occupied right now by a person that hates it. And so it was that slow, kind of burn, the grassroots movement thing. And I stopped doubting myself after that, for the most part, in stand-up, because it's like, well, I think this is funny, and I think that's what it's about. And then I find other people that have a similar sense of humor, and then they come to shows. So it was that kind of a deal.
Do you remember where that was at when that triggered?
I want to say it was Rockford, Illinois, but I also think this was somewhere in Wisconsin. So right. I'm not exactly sure where it happened, but I do remember. I mean, you do so many shows in this business for 22 years and everything starts to kind of melt together. But yeah, it was probably the best thing that's ever happened to me professionally is to stop caring. And I don't mean caring, I still care that people are spending money to come to shows.
Right.
I care about that, but I'm going to do what I think is funny and then I'll be able to sleep at night. I'm not going to worry about it.
Well, no, you can't go ahead and go into, like you said, you're not all of a sudden going to start doing 10 dick jokes in a row.
Right.
If that's not your thing, that's not who you are.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
And you're like, look, you can, like you said, you can come along for the ride or you don't have to, you know.
Yeah.
I don't give a shit one way or the other. You know, at the end of this gig, I'm going back to Fergus Falls. I got my kids and I got my family and my home and everything, and I'm going to relax and enjoy myself. I'm going to sleep. You guys can be pissed off that you spent $10-20 on a ticket and you didn't have a good time, but I don't know what to tell you.
Absolutely.
Yeah. What? How can you be so? Again, you got, this is, way to make people feel like shit with your 3 specials and your 5 albums.
Oh,
how are you so productive? You got 2 kids.
This is going to be nuts. I can't remember my jokes.
Yeah.
So I am essentially forced to write new material, because if I take 2 weeks off and I listen to my last set, it's like I'm listening to a comedian I never heard. I don't have like early onset dementia or anything like that. I have a sharp memory in any other case, but I just don't remember how they go all the time. So when I record an album, and then once it comes out, I know that I, for the most part, shouldn't be doing those. You like to keep a couple winners in your back pocket.
Sure, absolutely.
But then, I just try to. I also get bored very easily. I've seen guys that do the same hour for 15 years. I mean, they take a drink of water at the exact same time in the joke. It's just so automatic, and it absolutely works for them. I'm not mocking it.
Right.
Because it works, and people come back to see it. They bring their friends. They're like, you got to see this bit about this. And that works. And that's a perfect, it's perfect for them. But for me, I get so sick of it. It gets so stale. I was doing this joke about hitting a pheasant with my car, and I was doing it for like 7 years. And my buddies came up to me after the show and they said, "What were you thinking about when you were doing that joke?" And I go, "I was thinking about what I was going to eat when I got off stage, but how did you know that?" And they just said, "Your eyes glazed over and you went into autopilot." And I was like, "Oh, that sucks. That's not fun." I mean, if somebody wants to hear autopilot, they can buy an album.
Well, you haven't gone on stage, because we were texting when we were putting this whole thing together. You haven't been on stage since the pandemic started. It was like March 11th, I think you said was your. I'm trying to look at the
that's right. March 11th. I was in Spokane, and then I went out for 1 week in July. I did 4 cities in July, but just because I wanted to see what it was like.
Right.
It's exactly what I thought. I mean, I was 24 hours ahead of some of these clubs getting closed down because these areas were spiking.
Sure.
And it's like, if you fly and you travel and your show gets canceled and you're stuck somewhere, no, thank you. That's the worst. What now with the
PC landscape that we've gone through, because literally since March 11th, when you stopped doing shows, until now, there has been such a switch. The pendulum has swung so far with all these PC snowflakes that are out there. Has that altered your writing or your approach in anything? Or are you still saying, you know what? Suck it. This is what I do.
Well, I'll tell you this. I have not written a joke since the pandemic started. I have been enjoying my life.
Good for you.
I have just turned it off. And when they sound the bells and whistles where I can go back, I'll start churning out again. But for right now, it just feels, I'm a guy that needs a finish line. Don't tell me to start running and you'll blow a whistle when I'm done. Fuck you. I need to know when I'm going to be done, or I'm not running. That's just a fact. So I'm not going to write all these, jokes. I don't know if they're funny. I can't try them on stage.
Right.
So I'm just going to, enjoy my life and do some projects around the house, hang out with my kids, just be available. That's something I haven't been able to do. When my daughter is at her mom's house and she just drops by for lunch, I mean, she knows I'm going to be here. It's fantastic. So I'm kind of using it for that. As far as the PC snowflakes go, I will say, man, you want to talk snowflakes? They're on both sides.
Yeah.
I mean, if your material goes too far to the left, you're going to get, and if it goes too far to the right, you're going to get, hey, buddy. It's like, there's a zone you're supposed to stay in, but here's the rule I try to follow is I don't care about political correctness. I mean, I do if it's going to hurt someone's feelings. Personally, there's certain words I don't use.
No, exactly. I mean, yeah, absolutely.
But what I try to remember is if I believe in it and I can defend it, then I have no problem saying it.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at with my writing. And I've tried to do that. You know, I have a story on Footprints on the Moon about a kid that has Asperger's. He's behind me at my son's Christmas choir concert. And it took me forever to figure out how to lay that out.
Mm-hmm.
I got, I'm talking emails where you have to scroll through with your thumb a whole bunch of times.
Sure.
That long. I got slapped in the face twice after shows. But it was always, here's what it's always from people that are 2 steps removed from the situation, right? It's always like,
mm-hmm.
How dare you talk about Asperger's? I have a friend who has a cousin whose son's kitten has Asperger's. Slap, It's like that. But then you hear people will come up to you right after that will say, I work with children with Asperger's in the school system. And thank you for saying that. It makes sense. And we need to treat them, like kids, not like they're some subhuman, whatever. And so, that gives you a little bit of faith and a little bit of like hope to keep working on it.
Well, yeah, that validates it, because here you have somebody who is immersed in it and they understand what you're saying. I mean, I had some lady come up after a show one time, and it was so, in the comment I make, it was just, basically, if you want to, solve the world's problems, don't worry about, global warming, stop global stupid, spay and neuter white trash is like a line that I use in the joke. This lady comes up and I was literally selling these shirts that said stop global stupid, spay and neuter white trash. And this girl's in line and she's got her arms crossed.
That's always a good look.
22 years old, just got, mouth like the, if I may take the line from Pat Godwin, mouth like the ass of a cat. She's just coming up and she comes up and there's a line of people and she literally comes up and she goes, so you're advocating eliminating an entire race, not unlike Hitler. Swear to God.
Wow.
And I looked at her and I went, yeah, that's exactly what I meant. And then this guy behind her is like looking like, who the hell is this chick? And so she's still trying to plead her case. And I go, could you step 1 foot to your left? Okay, cool. So she's still talking. The guy goes, yeah, I need a 2 large, a medium, an extra. So it was hilarious. It was perfect timing that the guy behind her in line wanted to buy a bunch of these t-shirts.
Oh, that's awesome.
So she's looking at me. She goes, you're not listening to anything that I'm saying. And I go, you are picking up on me quickly. I just so wanted to like you with your son. I wanted to punch her in the face. And she was over 18.
Well, yeah, absolutely. Here's the thing. It's like I said, if you believe in what you're saying and you can defend it, then you should be able to say it, right? I mean, I'm talking about a kid with Asperger's, but the main point of the story is if you give a child excuses, all you're doing is making an adult with excuses.
Right.
So, and I stand by that, I talk about my son's wrists. He can't supinate. He can't turn it from his palm down to his palm up. His wrist doesn't work that way because his forearms are fused together. And he used to use that as an excuse all the time. And I was like, no way. I brought him to the YMCA and I showed him a kid who was so fast, but he didn't have his left arm from the elbow. And so he had like all these attachments. He was like a Swiss Army knife. He would take off his driving attachment and put on like a little spatula. And then he would use that to hold the ball, to prop the ball up before he shot it. And he was unreal. And so I was like, you want to tell me about your wrists again? No, thank you.
Right.
So, I'm just a huge believer in not giving kids excuses because they use them.
I agree completely.
Yeah.
Now, we have had a ton of bad gigs in our career. Last question. I always love asking this because it always brings out just the best stories. You talk about bombing in that gig in Macau. What is the worst gig that you remember having, if there is one that sticks out in your head?
Well, it started off as it's not the worst. I mean, the worst wouldn't be a funny story. The worst would be, you want to talk about the worst. It was a bar in Kirksville, Missouri, where
I've done it. Oh yeah.
It was all country music, and there was a Confederate flag as the backdrop. And so I took it down when I went up on stage. I just pulled the little pins out of it, and I'm like, I am not doing a show in front of this fucking flag. Are you kidding me? And then some guy, waves his little tiny gun in the air, and I'm like, whatever, man. I mean, I understand you can carry guns here. I get it, but you're not going to shoot me because I took this flag. It's the craziest thing I've ever heard of. And so, which was great because later that show, I did a joke about participation ribbons and how everybody gets a trophy now, and they all cheered. And then I just pointed down at the Confederate flag and was like, that's what that is, for Christ's sake. You lost and they gave you something. It's the same thing. What are you doing? Boo! It turned from cheering to booing real quick.
I love that. Well, I have zero issue with them taking down the Confederate statues because at the end of the day, those guys are traitors to their country.
Sure.
There's no other country that I can think of off the top of my head where you still have statues of traitors.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I completely agree. And I can see the other side of it where people want to leave them up to learn. You want to. Yeah,
I could see putting it in a museum.
Sure.
I mean, don't destroy them. I mean, take it. There's a place for it. I mean, no one's happy about the Holocaust, but I mean, you should know about it.
Yeah,
you should know that it happened.
Yep.
I mean, dude, I am so happy that we're able to catch up. It's been way too long. Your special is hilarious, Dad Channels. You can find it on Amazon Prime. It's also on a bunch of different platforms too. You can get the album. Your podcast, Middle of Somewhere, is on every podcast platform known to man. You can click on your website, chaddaniels.com, and get all the information there. And I wish you nothing but success, man. You're one of the most grounded, cool, funny people that I've ever had a chance to work with. And I'm very, very happy for you. And I hope that you and your son enjoy many, many years of locker boxing.
No chance that'll ever happen again, just because of the imagery in my head. But one last time, man, thanks a lot for doing that really personal bit in Appleton, because that changed my view of stand-up. So I really appreciate that.
No, man, I never knew that story. That's great to hear. It's cool to it's cool to hear that I had some kind of a positive influence on somebody and didn't get him a DUI. Hey, keep blowing a .18, my friend.
I will do my best.
Good talking to you, brother.
Good talking to you too.
Thanks for listening to A Drink with Derek. Find out when Derek is appearing near you by checking out DerekRichards.com. See you next time for A Drink with Derek.